good morning. This is Lizzie and Justin for Turning Towards Life. And here we are, another week, Justin. Feels like time flies, really. And having this kind of bit of punctuation, this practice as punctuation in our lives is such a kind of rhythmical thing. So I feel amazed that here we are again, and really grateful to be with you and to see what happens this morning. And thank you everyone for being with us and following along and being in the conversation with us.
Good morning, Lizzie. Morning, everyone. It's remains an incredibly important practice for me that we do this, and I know it is for lots of others. And you said this wonderful thing at the end of last week's conversation, which is to say to people, everyone who's listening, all of us, if you know people who would benefit from hearing this and being around this, you can share it with people, and maybe that will be true of today's conversation. So I want to say hello and welcome to all the people who are with us here live in our Facebook group, and then all the people who follow us in other places, because you might be getting this conversation as a podcast, or from our lovely Turning Towards Life website, or from YouTube. And in the last few weeks, we've done this lovely thing where you can sign up to get the conversation by email. If you go to Turning Towards Life, that is growing and growing, which is lovely to be able to share it in that way. And this conversation comes in another tremulous week, certainly in the side of the world that we're in. Big things are happening, Lizzie, and I'm finding that having grounding, stable, connecting practice is incredibly helpful for all the parts of me that get alarmed. And so that's what we're doing, is having grounded, stable, repeating, straightforward practice together. And as always, we have a source, and this week's source is from the wonderful Maya Stein, who we are very, very pleased to know. So thank you, Maya, for your writing. And you can find the sources, this is for everyone who's listening or watching, you can always find them in our Facebook group. And we also put them out with all the YouTube videos and all the podcasts. It'll be in there as well as a link to Maya's website. So I'm going to read it. Whatever you're afraid of, whatever you're warding off, trying to hold back from being true, whatever keeps sniffing at your legs, and whatever you keep kicking away, whatever draft you're trying to seal, whatever risk you push to the perimeter, whatever old whisper you're turning from to deafen, whatever exit you're avoiding, eyes locked on the straightaway, whatever breakage you think is yours to mend, and the endless ministrations of that mending, whatever call you keep not picking up, whatever blank piece of paper, whatever Hail Mary, whatever salt you keep throwing over your shoulder, one day it will stop being enough to keep you from your own magnificence. And what if this was that day?
Whatever you're afraid of, whatever you're warding off, trying to hold back from being true, whatever keeps sniffing at your legs and whatever you keep kicking away, whatever draft you're trying to seal, whatever risk you push to the perimeter, whatever old whisper you're turning from to deafen, whatever exit you're avoiding, eyes locked on the straightaway, whatever breakage you think is yours to mend, and the endless ministrations of that mending, whatever call you keep not picking up, whatever blank piece of paper, whatever Hail Mary, whatever salt you keep throwing over your shoulder, one day it will stop being enough to keep you from your own magnificence. And what if this was that day?
Thanks, Lizzie. So, reading, anything we read takes on different resonance depending upon when we read it. And we're having this conversation in the middle of March in 2022. And one of the things I can feel in myself and feel in this piece of writing, Lizzie, is this call to, well, slight detour. This word magnificence that Maya chooses. And I suppose one way of looking at magnificence is there are some contexts in which the way we think about it is how brilliant I'm going to be and how excellent I'm going to be and how successful I'm going to be and how all of that. But there are other times when another way of reading this, I think, is to see that our magnificence is something that is deeply, deeply universal. And it's the aliveness and gifts that come from being a human that we can bring to one another. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's something in the root of the word magnificence that has that in it, that's not about, we live in a culture that has so made everything into the narrative of individual success and getting what you want, that kind of story about what magnificence might be. There's all these stories about manifesting your, getting all of your, having all of your dreams, but I don't think that's what this is. I don't think that this is an invitation to imagine a world in which we just get what we want and somehow that's our magnificence. I seems to me really clear here that our magnificence is the shining, alive something that is a birthright of every single human being, and I think more importantly, every single living being, which is to be the ones that unfold into the world qualities that wouldn't be here if we weren't here. So I want to read it, whatever you're warding off, whatever you're pushing to the perimeter, whatever something that's happening that you want to hold back from being true, whatever all of that, whatever all the ways, all the bargains we make with life so that we won't be affected by things, one day all of those bargains will stop being enough to keep us from throwing ourselves all in. And from bringing our kindness and bringing our love and bringing our creativity and bringing our boldness and bringing our tenderness and bringing our emptiness and our humility, our fierce commitment, whatever it is, one day we'll find that all the reasons we've had to hold all of that back won't be enough to hold all of it back. And what if that was now? And that for me feels like it's a turning on the head actually of something that I think so many of us struggle with, which was we've been taught again and again and again that life is okay as long as we're the ones who are in charge of it, as long as it's going the way we want it. And then we find ourselves in the world where all kinds of things can't and won't go the way we want it because things happen that are way bigger than us, or things happen inside us, or things happen just in our immediate lives. So what if our story about what life could be wasn't predicated on any of those having things go our way, but was predicated on what we allow to come through, what we find it in ourselves for us to be the place where those qualities get expressed in life. And I suppose the last thing for me to say at this point is, and talking about that, coming at this writing from Maya in this way, I can feel is so healing for me, because there's so much in the world so much in this that I recognize today. Whatever I'm warding off or trying to hold back from being true, I do not want the world to be the way it is. And so then in here I can feel a call to and even maybe perhaps right in the middle of that, there are ways that I can unfold right here some things that are unarguably gifts in life. And that may just be how you and I talk together this morning for the half an hour we're together.
Yeah. So it's very beautiful to receive your reflection, Justin. And as you were speaking, I was getting so curious about the relationship between turning away from things and our own magnificence. And in a way, when I read this lovely piece of Maya's writing, I thought, oh, that word magnificence is a surprise. Like, what's magnificence got to do with turning back towards things? Like, if I stop letting the Hail Marys be enough to keep me from my own magnificence, what does that mean? And why magnificence linked here? And so I was in some ways working with my surprise and curiosity at that word being there, and thinking, what can I find in me that is true about that? And the thing that popped in was that I have recognized a really resentful part of me that I've learned is like really unwelcome in my life. Like, I don't enjoy being resentful. I don't want to be resentful. It's not part of like who I think I should be and am in the world. It's like, so when it comes, it's like, how do I get rid of this? What do I do? And so in some way, it's something that I'm afraid of, something that I deny, something I push away, is this kind of resentful feeling. And the other day, I got to turn towards it and recognized all the ways I'd been so unwelcoming to this part of me. And then when I welcomed it, I found my magnificence inside of it. Like the thing that I was warding off, the thing that I do my best to practice my way out of, or to like to cultivate something opposite of, to the thing I'm trying to deafen, to use Maya's language, and the keep sniffing at my legs, coming back every now and again, and I keep pushing it away to the perimeter. And on that day, a week ago or so, it stopped being enough to keep me away from my own magnificence, is what happened, because I turned in towards it and I thought, well, what if I consider my resentment as a being? What if I consider it as having a life, having purpose, having importance, having intelligence? What if I change my orientation to it? And it turns out it's got all kinds of things in it that I didn't know about because I had been pushing it to the perimeter. And so inside of it, I found loyalty and goodness and respect and all possible attributes of my magnificence. All the things that manifest in this word, this part of me, this resentful part of me, seem to have life force in them, aliveness that was there to kind of be reclaimed, even though when the resentment comes, it feels horrible. Part of why I think it feels horrible is because it's so unwelcome. And so I feel like the relationship with magnificence and turning towards the things I'm avoiding and the things I'm pushing away feels very real to me this week in particular. And I was really shocked, by the way. I mean, my resentment, I think humans generally have a bit of an issue with resentment anyway, and I have my own particular flavor with it, but like, as in, I don't want things to be this way. Things should be different. I should be, people should be different than this. How dare they, all of that kind of thing, which is not a pleasant feeling to be inside of. So I've always tried to say, well, that's not who I want to be in the world. And now I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm quite looking forward to my resentment coming back, because I can see my magnificence or the magnificence inside of it now. And it's only a glimpse. It's not like it's going to be fine when I feel resentful again. about whatever domestic things happening or whatever thing in the world is not going the way that I think it is or whatever, when the resentment arises, I think what will be there is a different kind of possibility than there was before. Whereas before it was just all I could do is act resentfully and stomp around and be annoyed. I think now there's an opening for maybe I will be like that, but I'll be able to see it in a different way that includes much more than just the contracted experience of feeling resentful.
Such a question coming up in me as you're talking about this, and I'm also feeling into my own response to things about the choices we make about compartmentalization and welcome. So when we find that there's something inside us, and Maya's writing in a way talks about, one way of reading every one of these sentences is that it's, as well as whatever it is that's outside us, it's how we're relating to what's inside us that we're warding off or pushing away or wishing weren't true or whatever. And for a while, and in some circumstances, compartmentalizing, which is really the equivalent of taking one who is inside us and locking them away in a room so that we can't hear their screams and their calls and their whatever. There is a logic to it, and sometimes for very good reason our minds and bodies and hearts do that with parts of ourselves, maybe because of something we've experienced that's traumatic or unbearable or whatever, and it's how we get to continue to be in life that dynamic happens. And ultimately and eventually, there's probably a time for each of us when the undoing of that is incredibly healing and very necessary. What struck me about what you were saying is that there's this whole realm of both of human experiences and also of parts of us where it's very easy to try to do that, even though it's not called for at all. So to feel, you were talking about resentment, and I could feel that in myself, and I can feel parts that are afraid and parts that are ashamed, parts that I wish I hadn't done this or that or the other, or whatever it is. And it seemed to me whilst you were talking this, I was feeling, oh yes, it's really, really tempting to think that our magnificence and our freedom will come from learning how to compartmentalize all of those as well. If I can just make this resentment go away, shut it off behind enough big doors, and put the bolts on and everything, and banish it from myself, then everything will be okay. Except for the reasons why societies where we do that to people tend to have a darkness in them in the middle of it if that happens, and also for the reason of all the gifts that get banished with the ones who we banish. There's something so to be taken, so to be said for this really, really kind move that you were talking about, is treating what arises in us as if they're beings with their own history and their own feelings and their own wishes and their own, I think, in hearing you, their own good intention and their own gifts, and coming into it that way. And that got me thinking about what it's like to be met, for any of us who've been lucky enough to have been caught in some kind of difficulty that we wanted to make go away, and then someone who loves us meets us right in the middle of that and goes, I see you, I know this is painful, I know it's a struggle, I'm right here, and can name in us goodness that they feel in us, even when we're raging or frozen or resentful or whatever it is. Somebody who can speak right into the heart of it. It's so obvious that what it does is it rehabilitates us, it welcomes us back. Last just thought on this, which is I think the reason that is true is because we and these parts of us that you're talking about are not so different to one another. We feel very separate from one another, but we're not separate in that way. we feel like we have to effort really hard to get other people to be, or get myself to be this way, and actually that's not always true. We feel like nobody sees our goodness on what we're trying to do. That's not always true. So if we can be with the parts of ourselves in the way that you're describing and honor their goodness in that loving way, there's also much more chance that we can do it with one another, which we really need.
Yeah.
We really need when we're struggling or in fear or in pain or something. We really need people to be that way with us.
Yeah. Yeah, Justin, I was totally going there as well in myself, reflecting and listening to you. What I notice is that it's like a lineage of goodness, in that when I was in my resentment, I happened to be with someone who said, well, hold on a second, let's get curious about this resentment. You seem to not want it to be here. Maybe if you could be together, could we welcome it and ask it some questions? Like, could we? And I was like, oh no, this is the thing that has to go away so that we can do the thing, have the conversation we want to have. And they're like, no, let's just bring it here and see. And I was like, what? I had such a long held narrative, this needs to not be here. And so I just letting go of that, I thought, my goodness, okay, well, now I've got to encounter something that I can now see horribly disinterested in and really annoyed with, that it's even here in my life. And there's some shame around it being there and it shouldn't be there, all of that. And so then what I noticed is that in the turning towards something that I thought was not turning towards a ball, like as in it's not a thing to turn towards, it's the thing to need to be removed or to work against or to not have here anymore. It feels like it's opened my curiosity to those parts of others that they have that same definition of. And now I feel really curious about the implications of it, like the reverberations in my relationships with other people. So it's really kind of opened something up, like, my goodness, all those places that each of us, and probably will have difference between each of us, where we've gone, no, that's the thing that's not welcome here. I'm fine with feeling sad. Sadness is something that I can see has intelligence in it. I've treated that one well. Joy I've treated really well. Satisfaction I've treated really, really well. But I haven't treated these other parts well. I haven't treated my resentment well. I haven't treated my fear well. So I've been disrespectful to parts of myself by saying that they're not welcome here. And all the while, as you said about, places where these things are all, you can be this way, but not that way. And it's all very defined in black and white. They have the darkness inside of them. I can feel the darkness building in me in all the places I have decided to banish, and that's not who I want to be as a human being. I'm definitely not going to be that. They don't go away. They come and get me really quite heavily if I don't turn towards them. So I think I'm in this slight kind of shocked place of something as fundamental to me in my life as resentment, which is like the kind of the thing that hurts me the most. It has the most, it has the grandest lack of acceptance in it. And when even that gets welcomed, it's like, hold on a second, everything kind of turns on its head. So then all of the things that I have judged as, oh, I definitely can't turn towards that in that person, I can feel the gift of turning towards those big hairy things that you think, no, not that one. And I feel really enhopened and kind of, I don't know, slightly breathless at the possibility of what that really means.
I've been feeling into myself whilst you've been speaking, Lizzie, about what it is to turn towards the darknesses that we want to keep away, and who and what turns towards what, what in us, what of us turns towards what, because resentment's such a good example, and I can feel so many times I've been caught in resentment in my own life. And for sure, the thing that I don't want to do is to turn towards it in a way that simply puts it in charge. I'm not wanting to, because one of the things I'm feeling sort of really present with as you're speaking is the many kinds of darkness that we have in us, the way the parts of us that if they were, even if they have really good intention, if they were given free rein, would be destructive for us and those around us, the ones we care about. So it can't be, oh, here you are, just have the car keys. So so I think this is why it really helps to have one another as well, because there's always something of us. You know, when we feel really alone and then we find out that there's anyone in the world who cares about us and they love us and they're willing to accept us, we find contactfulness with a kind of safety and possibility that we might not have been in contact with before. I really think we need one another where we can find one another for that, to be that for one another. And that's the very same thing in us that can also turn towards the dark parts of ourselves, and not, I want to say they're not dark parts of ourselves. They are the ones in us who carry whatever it is, anger or fear or resentment or hate or sorrow, and they're not dark, but they can be those ones that cause great difficulty for us and the ones around us. So when we can be towards them like someone who is being super kind and loving towards us, then we have the chance of saying, yes, come in close, and no, you don't have to have me behave this way. We don't have to relate in this way to other people. There are other possibilities. Let's find out what those are together. And that's a process of wondering and being in wonder also at the magnificence of all the ones inside us. But I suppose I'm saying all of this because I'm feeling, as we're talking, just how important talking to you is for me. That we, in the innermost circle of this conversation, which is the one where you and I talk to one another, and I know that there are many, many circles of people with us, but in this innermost circle we get to create a community for a while. There's a community of two, this form of it. It's also a community of all the different magnificent kinds of magnificences each of us have within us that we also carry from other people. And we don't have to rush, and we don't have to, one of the things I love about this practice is we don't have to get anywhere in particular. It's not like we know we finished the turning towards life conversation because we found the answer to something, or we got to the end. It's more like, here we are, staying faithful to the practice of speaking and listening to one another. So I suppose at this point in the world where there is so much that's happening, at least so much that I'm feeling that awakens that in me, which is tender and uncertain and sometimes frightened, and I feel such a call to say to the two of us, but then also to sort of say widely, we need one another. It really matters that we gather to talk and listen to one another in this way, and we don't try to do this on our own. We don't have our magnificence be solitary. And unfortunately, most of us have been taught that life is essentially a solitary pursuit, which is why communities, it's hard to feel part of communities, but we can start to make them again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, in my experience of my own life and my own journey of being a human, there have been a couple of moments where I've kind of stopped dead in my tracks on my own and thought, I can see something, and something is happening to me that is changing me. But the vast majority of times when something has shifted grandly the possibility of my life, given what it just was, has always been in some kind of community, intimacy with another person, environment where I'm connected into something bigger than myself, even if it's only just another person that's bigger than myself, like bigger than the boundary of just me. And So I feel really, really glad that that's true, and that I've had the good fortune to be able to be in contact with other people. It's such a blessing. And to then extend that into the world in some way, like we're doing here, Justin, feels, I don't know what's more important than that, really. You know, for us to be listening to one another, to be opening into these different inquiries. And I don't know about how everyone else feels about this and what happens during these conversations for other people, but for me, I can just notice kind of doors opening in me of like I've had this huge realization sitting here with you, Justin, about the way that the parts that are inside of me are also inside of you. Because, you know, when you said there's a community of me and there's a community of you and there's a community of us two coming together, it's much more than just two people sitting here. It's myselves and yourselves, and there's like all kinds of things going on if we allow it to. So the part of you that's afraid could talk to the part of me that's afraid. The part of you that sees goodness can talk to the part of me that sees goodness, but the part of you that sees goodness can also talk to the part of me that's afraid. And so this kind of, I don't know what the word is, like exponential possibilities of relationship that can happen between two people, let alone more than that. And it suddenly just feels unfathomably miraculous of what's possible between people. And yeah, I feel quite kind of slightly blown to smithereens by that feeling of multitudinousness. You know, it's like when you're working with a group and you look at all the different combinations of people that could do work together. If there's like 20 people in a room, you go, oh no, well, certainly me, I can't do the maths on that. That's too difficult. There's too many options. It suddenly feels like that. And that if we could have a practice of calling on the different parts of ourselves in appropriate response to the different parts of another, my goodness, you know, it feels big and important.
Such a wonderful place to pause. I was going to say to end, but this conversation never really ends.
No.
And I'm doing some work this week with a group, and I'll be wondering about this in a new way with all of us about this. There are so many different parts of us that could bring their magnificence to the parts of others,
Yeah.
as well as the deeper something that each of us is that is magnificent in and of itself, that can be a gift to one another.
Yeah.
And I wanted to pick up just before we ended on something you said, Lizzie, which is one way we could find out what happens for other people in this conversation. I'm saying this to all of you who are with us, is you can write to us. So we have email addresses, hello@turningtowards.life, or Justin or Lizzie at turningtowards.life. And also we have our Facebook group, and it would be, and also you can write reviews on podcast platforms if you listen to the podcast. If you're with us and there's some way in which you would like to let us know, include us in the conversation about what this is like for you to be with us, we would be so grateful. And you can reach us in any of those ways. What a thing it would be, Lizzie, to feel anew the ripples of this conversation being reflected back. So there's a request from us to all of you who are with us, and thank you for traveling this path with us week by week by week, and for introducing people who've not come across us to this as well. I know that keeps on happening too, so thank you for all of that. And all being well, we'll be here again this time next week, Sunday morning UK time next week.
Bye everyone.
Everyone, bye.